Hello and welcome to another 30-minute Thursday. My name is Amit. It is 2 p.m. in the still summery, but holding on for a little bit longer Pacific Northwest. I hope you guys are doing great. I hope everybody's staying safe, staying healthy, staying sane. Very important to stay sane in an otherwise insane world. And thank you for joining me for another 30-minute Thursday. I'm so happy to see everybody. I don't know who's out there. I don't know who's watching. I'd love for you guys to check in with me, but it's really nice to see you guys, or to be seen by you guys. For those of you who are not aware, on Saturday, just a few short days ago, I jumped out of an airplane at 13,500 feet. That was my first time as a skydiver, and I got to tell you, it was a life-changing experience. I highly recommend it. I know that it's not for everybody, but if it's even remotely on your bucket list, I recommend you do it. Please don't wait, because I'll tell you, like everything else in this world, it does not get easier with time. If in fact, it only gets a little bit more and more scary as we get older. But it was an absolute amazing experience. If you want to see what it's like to free fall, you can find me on my Facebook page there. I did post a video of me and my tandem instructor falling from 13,500 feet, and thankfully the parachute deployed, knock on wood there. And what can I tell you? All's well that ends well. I will tell you that I did not share this with my mother until after the fact. So after 50 some odd years on this planet, I've kind of figured out that there's some things that are better said when it's over, not when you're thinking about it. So with all that said, I have a zeal for life. I don't know if you guys have been through anything that's like really scary and really, changes your perspective and whatnot. But I do have this passion. I have always had it, of course, but it's a reminder of just how awesome our world really is and how fabulous things can be. And we just have to see it from that perspective. So with that said, I'm going to stop chanting and burning incense, and I'm going to jump right into the important things, which is what's going on with the economy, what's happening with the Fed, where are we going with inflation, and what's happening with the housing market. There's a lot to cover. And as always, I talk a lot and we don't have enough time. So the Fed met last week at a symposium in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, with a bunch of other central bankers. And our chairman, Fed chairman, what's his name, Jerome Powell, came out on Friday and said, very poetically, by the way, that the Fed doesn't know anything about what they're doing. He didn't admit it that way, of course, but he said regarding inflation, we are navigating using the stars under cloudy skies. Wow, that is, the man's a Shakespeare. That's really poetic. That basically means that they're driving in the dark without their lights on. They don't know. Nobody really knows. And anybody who tells you, yeah, I know certainly how this is going to work and what's going to happen next, they're probably not completely on point with that. They may think they know, they may have a good read, myself included, by the way. I think I have an idea of what's coming next, but frankly, I can't be sure. Our economy is massive. It takes a long time for these things that the Fed is doing to actually take hold in the economy, right? For them to actually see the effects of their policy. So it takes time, and not for nothing, but all of these statistics that we receive, that the Fed also receives, that they use to help them determine what exactly they're going to do next. 70% of that information is based on assumptions and based on certain sort of formulas. It's kind of like pixie dust. It's not hard and fast data. So it's easy for them to actually, sorry, I'm getting emails, which is distracting, but it's easier for them at the Fed or at the Bureau of Labor Statistics or whoever else it is that's putting these statistics together. If it's 70% of it is something that is not cold hard facts, then it makes things really easy to kind of slip and slide and maneuver and do whatever. So we'll see what happens. But yes, as of Friday, this past week, Fed chairman came out and said, we don't know. We're using the stars to navigate. The skies are cloudy, so we're taking our best guess. Now, in September, which is starts tomorrow. It's amazing. The summer is basically over. For those of you in the South, my friends in Texas, it's still going to be hot until probably that 1 or 2 days in December when everything freezes, and then it'll be hot again. So for you guys, I sympathize. But in September, on September 20th, I believe it is, the Fed is going to meet again, and they're going to make decisions about whether or not they should raise the short-term interest rates to really try to choke the life out of this inflation that is coming down, by the way. Inflation is coming down, not coming down slowly enough. And what they're really worried about is saying, well, we've defeated it and it's out of the way, it's down for the count. And, you know, in a very Rocky-like way, it gets up off the mat at the last second before the bell rings and is ready to fight again. Like, the Fed does not want to see that happen with inflation. They want to knock it out and be sure that it's knocked out and it's not going to rear its ugly head for some time. But they don't know how that's going to look. They don't know how that's going to work. So today, in fact, there was a release of what's known as the Personal Consumption Expenditure Report, the PCE. That is the Fed's favorite measure of inflation. And it showed a slight uptick in the rate of inflation year over year. Year over year, guys, got to understand what year over year means. Year over year basically says that we look at a 12-month period from this time last year to this time this year. So year over year, the rate of inflation went up by a little bit. And that is going to be interpreted by the media and the economists that have an axe to grind and have a dog in the fight, so to speak. It's going to be interpreted any which way they want to. But here's the deal with why that is. When you do a 12-month rolling average, every time you add a month at the new, like the end of that 12-month period, you got to take a month off of the beginning of that, or else you just have cumulative like 20 months or 28 months. If you want to keep it 12 months and you're adding, let's say, July of 2023, that means that July of 2022 has to go away. And so the way these statistics work is every month there is a number for that month of inflation, and they add up all 12 months from the new month all the way to the last 12 months. But the one that happened that would have been month 13, that's gone, right? So we replace one number with another number. So here's the deal. The number that we're replacing, the number that's going away, that's falling off the edge, last year was a negative number. It wasn't even zero. It was like negative 0.1 inflation. Okay, so it was a very low number. It was a negative number. And we replaced that with a number that was a positive 0.3 inflation. So an incremental gain, yes, but if you remove a negative number and add a positive number and you add all those other numbers together, you're going to see a slight increase in inflation. And that's what happened today. And so there are going to be naysayers out there. There are going to be people in the media who like to sell the negative, saying things like, oh my gosh, inflation's coming back. The Fed's not done fighting. And that may very well be, by the way. I'm not saying that we're done. It's not up to me one way or the other. But I am saying that things are moving in the right direction, although there are some moments here and there where we're going to see some backslides and some other things happening, because our economy, as I've said time and again, is massive and it is not very agile. It is not your jet ski. It is not your speedboat. By the way, I'm looking for friends for next summer, guys. All you friends that have boats, look me up, man. I would love to be out there on the water with you guys. I'm great in a boat. I can drive, I can ski, I can wakeboard, I can do all that, but I don't own a boat. So if you have one and you're looking for a good friend, I'm right here. But coming back honestly to the what I'm saying, speedboats, jet skis, super maneuverable, right? You can crank them to the left, you can crank them to the right, and they're going to respond really well. those gigantic cruise ships that people take to go to Alaska or to go to the Caribbean or wherever it is that people cruise, those don't maneuver very easily. And that's kind of like what our economy is. And so you have to move it slowly. And sometimes it takes a little zig if you want to actually zag. And so that is what we have to expect with what's going on with inflation. So it's going to take more time. Sadly, more time than any of us would like, because interest rates on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage are somewhere between, the mid 7s to even the low 8% range. And frankly, in more than 2 decades as a mortgage lender, I've never seen rates like this. And so it's really unstable and it's really kind of scary. I'm not going to kid you guys. I can't sugarcoat that. What I can tell you is that there are things that the Fed wants to see happen that is supposed to change their perspective. And you're not going to like this. I've been telling you about this from the get-go. You're not going to like it, but I'm going to tell you anyway. What the Fed wants is for you to lose your job. Maybe not you personally, maybe not me personally, hopefully not. I don't take it personally unless they make it personal, but they want to see more unemployment. The Fed has been basically hanging its hat and staking its reputation right now on the fact that, yes, inflation is twice where we want it to be, but unemployment is really, really low, which means that the economy is still very strong and we don't have a recession. You may have heard people talking about a soft landing and that the Fed's trying to kind of thread the needle and bring down the rate of inflation without bringing the economy down along with it and causing a recession. They're still trying to do that. And the way they're looking at it is, or measuring it, I should say, is what's the employment picture look like? How's everybody's job doing? And the more people lose their jobs, the more the Fed is going to feel like they are fighting inflation the right way. And they've all but said that. In fact, Chairman Powell said that on Friday when he made his comments out of the symposium of central bankers in Jackson Hole. He was talking specifically about unemployment needs to go up, which means that people have to lose their jobs. Why? How does that work? Is Powell a sadist? Maybe. I don't know him. I can't say one way or the other. What I can say is their theory is that when there's tight employment, meaning that that employers are fighting for employees. Let's go in the Wayback Machine and go back 2 years, right? When we were coming out of COVID. And they were offering, employers that is, were offering all sorts of salaries and bonuses and whatnot to all sorts of people, even in entry-level jobs, right? I don't know if you guys remember this. I've got a pretty good memory, all things being equal. And I remember that there was staffing problems, that restaurants couldn't be open for lunch every day or for dinner every day, or some restaurants just decided that they're not even going to serve people at their restaurant. They're just going to do takeout only because they couldn't get wait staff and they couldn't get kitchen staff. And I remember the grocery stores in my area and in some other parts, it's Tom Thumb or Skaggs Albertsons or Piggly Wiggly, I remember from my youth or whatnot. Here it's or HEB in Austin, which everybody loves. You Austinites in your HEB, that's crazy. But here it's QFC and it's Safeway or of course Whole Foods. But they were paying top dollar, $20 an hour for people to come work at the grocery stores, right? And they were giving signing bonuses, meaning that they would give you a bonus to sign on and work for them because they needed people to work. And when you have something like that going on, what happens is everyone's got money in their pocket, right? When you start working and you're making a higher rate of income than you typically make, you're feeling pretty good about things, right? You got more money in your pocket than you did, which means that you can be a little bit more extravagant with your expenses, right? It's just human nature. It doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you good. It just makes you a human. And so when you get paid more, you're naturally going to look at things like, maybe I'll go to the movies more often, or maybe I'll go travel more often. Maybe I'll finally buy that bigger TV that I want, or we'll take that vacation that I'm looking at, or that new car, or any number of other things, guys. You know what people spend money on. So when you're getting paid more, you're more confident to spend that money. Well, we had some problems with supply chains. We had some problems with getting stuff in the stores and on the shelves because we had the COVID lockdowns and the whole world kind of stopped for a little while. So you have all this money in the hands of the consumer. There's not enough product. And so people are willing to spend more money on things and like, you know what? I want it now. I'll pay the rush fee, right? Because I have more money. That's kind of what the Fed is trying to put an end to. Hold on one second. I got to adjust myself here, my older back. So that's what the Fed's trying to adjust. They want to bring that down. And so here's the flip side. When you start losing your job, not you personally, hopefully, but when people start losing their jobs and they're looking for jobs and it's hard to find a job and they're worried about what's going to happen next, guess what? They stop taking that vacation, right? They're not going to buy that new TV. They're not going to do as much dining out as they would have if they were confident in their employment. And so there's still macroeconomics, right? The laws of supply and demand, whatever else we want to say. If I've got a high supply and a low demand, I've got to find a way to bring the demand up or to bring the supply down. And the way to do that is by bringing down prices. So if I've got a lot of stuff to sell and no one's buying it, then I've got to bring down the price of that stuff to the point where people will start buying it. And the only way, at least in the Fed's mind, that they're going to make this happen is to create more and more job losses in the economy, with the idea and the hope, at least, that they don't crash the economy along the way into a recession. And that's going to kind of balance out the supply and demand, balance out what people are willing to pay for things, and in theory, balance out the inflation that we've experienced for the last 18 months, give or take. We'll see how that happens. Right now, it's hard to say. Let me see my time. Oh, we're good. Right now, it's hard to imagine, because here's the thing. Number one, and I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I just said it, that like 70% of these statistics are based on assumptions and models. They're not really based on hard data. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think a lot of these numbers are cooked. I think a lot of this information is kind of bogus. I think that the powers that be at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as an example, are miscounting how they're identifying the rate of employment, the rate of unemployment. I think they're looking at things and making adjustments based on hope and based on best case scenario. And that is the number that's being reported initially. And then after the fact, they revise the numbers. And those revisions are always negative, meaning like, hey, we overstated last month's employment picture by 25,000 jobs. There's actually 25,000 less people working than we said there were. But no one hears the revision. You just hear the initial number, right? So it came out a couple of weeks ago, and I think I mentioned it on one of my 30-minute Thursdays, that the Bureau of Labor Statistics revised the employment picture for an entire year, from like April of 2022 until March of 2023. They revised it down. So that's like an entire year's worth of statistics that are like, we kind of miscounted. So I think that a lot of this information is kind of being manipulated anyway. I've said before about statistics being lies and about we could torture the numbers to get whatever information we want out of them. And I still feel that way. But we're seeing more and more that it's becoming difficult to, can I say lie? Can I say manipulate the data? I think that's a nicer word. It's becoming more difficult to do that, because we're seeing people anecdotally that are losing their jobs, it's taking longer for them to get hired and to find a new job. I'm reading reports that people are like, you know what? I'm nervous about my job. I don't want to go looking for a new job right now. I want to hold on to what I have right now because I'm worried about that. There is something called JOLTS, JOLTS. That's job openings and labor, labor transfer, labor, I forget what the T stands for. The S is a survey. But in any event, this is kind of like the most forward-looking of the reports on employment is the JOLTS report, job openings. And we're seeing massive, massive job openings, meaning not that employers are looking for workers, right? Quite the contrary. They're letting these things stay open. They're letting these positions stay open and they're not filling them, which is a telltale sign that unemployment is going to go up. Unemployment or employment, however you want to look at it, is one of the more lagging indicators in our economy when we're talking about a recession. What a lagging indicator means is that it's the caboose of the train, not the locomotive. So it's the last thing that people feel. Let me explain what that means. Basically, if you have employees, you want to hold on to those employees for as long as you can before you lay them off in any sort of normal world for a lot of different reasons. Number one, it takes time to find the right people to work for you and then to train those people to do the job you need them to do. That takes time and it costs money. In the meantime, your entire team is kind of suffering while the new hires are learning how to do the job that you need them to do. Beyond that, what happens is rather than lay people off, what a lot of employers do is cut hours or cut pay or change shifts for people and try to keep people on board longer and longer and longer. Eventually, as things really slow down in the economy and demand for goods and services comes down, ultimately, that's when people are laid off and let go. Now, there are a lot of other things going on out there. For example, there's something that a phenomena called quiet cutting, which is really interesting. So in the heyday, when we had like people were looking for people to work for them, there was something called quiet quitting, where people were like, you know, I don't really care for my job. I don't really care for what I'm doing. I'm going to do as little as I possibly can and still get paid, of course, but I'm going to look for a new job and, you know, maybe I'll find something, but I'm just not going to put full effort into it. That was quiet quitting. Now there's quiet cutting, which is basically employers kind of changing hours, kind of changing how many hours people are needed to work, kind of changing what sort of job titles they've got and bringing down the amount of money that's being paid out to people. And maybe the problem solves itself by these people just quitting rather than being laid off. If they quit, by the way, then it's not reported to the Bureau of Labor Statistics as newly unemployed. And so there's all sorts of weird stuff that's happening in the data of what's going on with employment and unemployment. But the Fed has said time and again and continues to beat that drum that they want to see more people not working. And as a result of that, they dress it all up, wage pressure, inflation, et cetera, et cetera. But as a result of fewer people working, the theory is that the rate of inflation is going to come down. And so hold on to your hats, guys, and hold on to your jobs, because the Fed wants to see this happen. And the only way they can make that happen, they can't force your boss to fire you. I don't think so, at least. But what they can do is make it very expensive for people to operate, for companies to operate. And that's what they're doing with all of these short-term rate hikes, right? So the more the Fed increases the cost of money, the more expensive it is for companies to expand, the more expensive it is for companies to try these different projects and to do these other things. And so what they do, there's only two things that the economy does. It either expands, and that's growth, or it contracts, and that's a recession. And so those are the two options, and we're not expanding. So y'all do the math on what's going to happen next. The Fed says, you know, we're going to try to navigate to a soft landing. Good luck with that. I just jumped out of a plane at 13,500 feet. A soft landing is really critical, and I had one. And props to my tandem jump instructor, Cody. That was great. But this is a much different thing. And I don't know if it's going to be possible for the Fed to thread the needle and tiptoe through this minefield and get us there. We'll see. We're definitely going to keep our eyes on things. Let me see where we are on time. We're looking good. But in the meantime, despite all that, despite interest rates in the mid 7s to low 8s, despite the fact that inflation continues at twice the level that the Fed really wants it to be at, despite the Fed saying that, you know, we need to see more unemployment in order to fight inflation, home values keep going up, which is crazy. And now some people, they're wrong, but some people in the media who claim to report on the economy and claim to know what's going on in the home sector think that rising home values are inflationary. They're wrong. There is nothing on the cost of housing in and of itself that is factored into the metrics used to create the inflation numbers. There's several inflation indices: personal consumption expenditures, that's the Fed's favorite. There's consumer price index, CPI. They each have different weightings, different rankings for various components of the economy. None of those components include, by the way, the cost of a home. They do have rent costs, yes. They do have shelter costs, meaning like hotel rooms and things of that nature. They even have owner's equivalent of rent, which means that if I were to rent my home out, what would that rent look like as a homeowner? But there's nothing in these calculations that talks about rising home values as a contributor to the rate of inflation. But home values are rising, and I'm going to do something here that's kind of tricky. I'm going to try to share my screen with you, and I'm going to show you some stats here real quick. So bear with me real quick. Hold on. Let's see if I can do it. Here we are. Look at this. Okay, man, my technology is getting better, so I'm learning. So here's the deal. These 5 companies, Case-Shiller, FHFA, which is actually a government agency, CoreLogic, Black Knight, Zillow, I'm sure you guys are familiar with. All of these institutions or entities track, among other things, the prices of homes nationwide. This is not just for the Pacific Northwest. It's not just for Texas. It's not just for the East Coast or whatnot. This is nationwide. And if you look month over month over month, you'll notice that we are on pace for 2023. Let me find my highlighter here. For 2023, for this entire year, which doesn't have many months left, right? 4 months left, basically. We are on pace to see, at the lowest, a 5% increase in home values, at the highest, a 10% increase on home values. That's this year with, you know, gosh, highest interest rates I've experienced in 22 years, with all this other economic doom and gloom, with all this uncertainty percolating and inflation and whatnot. Home values continue to rise. And if it's actually 10% in this calendar year, that's significant. Now, keep in mind that that chart was just through the month of June. We haven't even taken July into consideration yet, let alone August. These things lag, so it takes some time to get all that data. But that's what they're projecting right now. So that's with high interest rates. Guess what happens when all this stuff actually does settle down and the rate of inflation comes down and the interest rates on mortgages come way down? What do you think is going to happen? Lots of people. I read a statistic that for every 1% the interest rate comes down on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, 5 million buyers come back into the market. And so that's going to push our housing values significantly higher. There's just no way around that. We do not have the inventory. We have not had the inventory for a long, long time. And that continues to be the case right now. And so when these interest rates do turn, we're going to see a lot of people come back into this market. They're going to drive housing prices further up. And it's going to be that much more challenging for anybody who's really trying to buy a home to get their arms around a property and actually secure that. So I recommend, I know I sound like a broken record, but I recommend that if you're even remotely interested in buying a home, do it now. Do it before everybody else. Remember, 1% of interest equals 5 million more people to compete with nationwide, wherever you may be. So I recommend getting ahead of that curve and jumping in now. I know it's scary, but if you feel good about your job, if you feel good about your situation, and you're looking for a home to purchase, please call me, call your real estate broker. Let's talk about what we can do to help mitigate some of these concerns, to help balance out the good and the bad, and make sure that we put you in the best position to succeed, not just immediately, but big picture. Because when all these other buyers come back in, I remember what 21 looked like. There was a lot of escalation clauses. My average client was basically paying 15% above asking price. That is a huge premium to pay for waiting for the interest rates to get lower. So with that in mind, my goodness, we're a little bit early today, and I feel good about that. I want to thank you guys for spending a little bit of time with me, for listening to my 30-Minute Thursdays. I encourage you, please reach me. There's a lot of information that I'm not sharing with you guys, not because I'm hoarding it, but because I just don't want to bore you to tears. I don't want to take up too much time, but if you want to learn more about this, real estate partners, if you've got clients who you need to talk to and you're just not sure how to relay this information, whether they're selling or buying, please reach me. I'm happy to talk with them about that. Happy to answer their questions. I've got a ton of data, a lot of resources that I subscribe to, and I try to make this as digestible as possible, but I'm happy to spend as much time with you and your clients as necessary. Other than that, we got a long weekend coming up. I hope you guys have a fantastic Memorial Day. Good grief. I'd like the summer to start all over again, but sadly, it's the end of summer, the last hurrah. So I hope you guys have a great Labor Day. I hope everybody stays safe, stays sane, stays healthy. And if you do want to do something totally insane and awesome and life-changing, and you want to talk about skydiving, you can also find me on that. I'm probably not going to do that again anytime soon, but it was a great experience. And if you want to do it, don't wait. Life is too short and it never gets easier. All right. With all that said, thank you again for spending a little bit of time with me. I will see you next Thursday. Thank you so much and have a great long holiday weekend. Bye-bye.